Hello, and welcome back to English in Fluency. This is Alex, and I am so happy you've chosen to be here with me today. Thank you for pressing play, for making time in your busy day to focus on your growth and your English skills. Every single listen means the world to me, because it shows that you are committed to your journey, and you trust me to be a small part of it. I know there are countless podcasts and videos you could be watching, so the fact that you are here, right now, sharing this time with me, that truly means a lot. Today, we're going to dive into a topic that is incredibly important, yet so often misunderstood. It's a quiet force that can hold us back without us even realizing it. And that force is perfectionism. We're going to explore why perfectionism is a silent growth killer. You've probably heard the word perfectionism before. On the surface, it sounds like a positive quality, doesn't it? It sounds like someone who has high standards, someone who cares about doing a good job. But as we'll discover together in this episode, true perfectionism is something different. It's a deep, often hidden belief that if something isn't flawless, if it isn't 100% perfect, then it's a failure. This way of thinking can silently and slowly stop you from growing, from learning, and from becoming the person you want to be. It's called a silent killer because it doesn't announce its presence. It works in the shadows of your mind, whispering doubts and fears. It's the voice that says, "Wait, it's not ready yet," or "Don't even try. You'll probably make a mistake." This topic is so critical for personal growth because real growth isn't clean or perfect. It's messy. It's about taking action even when you're uncertain, making mistakes, and learning from them. If you are always waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, or the perfect skill level before you start, you will find that you miss countless opportunities that life presents. You'll spend far more time thinking, planning, and worrying than you do actually doing. This can lead to so much stress, anxiety, and a constant fear of failure. And when you live with that fear, your growth slows down to a crawl. Personal growth requires movement, not perfect stillness. It needs you to take small, imperfect steps, one after the other. This is especially true for those of you learning English. This journey is a perfect example of where perfectionism can be so damaging. I have met so many wonderful students who want to speak perfect English. They have this beautiful image in their mind of speaking fluently, with perfect grammar and a perfect accent. But this image becomes a prison. They wait. They wait until they feel they know every single grammar rule, every possible vocabulary word, or the perfect way to structure a sentence before they will even try to have a real conversation. But all that waiting is time they aren't practicing. And as we all know, without practice, there can be no real, meaningful progress. Perfectionism creates a powerful fear of speaking. You worry about making a mistake, about someone correcting you, or worse, about someone judging you. But I want to tell you something incredibly important. Mistakes are not your enemy. They are your greatest teachers. They are the very things that build new connections in your brain. They are evidence that you are trying, that you are stretching beyond your comfort zone. So, in our time together today, we are going to explore why perfectionism often disguises itself as a good thing, but in reality, it quietly sabotages your success. We will understand exactly why it deserves the name a silent growth killer. And, most importantly, we will talk about what you can do to break free from its grip. So please, stay with me, listen with an open heart, and if you feel comfortable, try repeating some of the sentences out loud to practice your speaking. Let's begin this important journey together, step by imperfect step. So, what exactly is perfectionism? Let's try to understand it more deeply. On the surface, perfectionism is the desire for everything to be completely flawless, without any mistakes, errors, or problems. Now, wanting to do things well is a wonderful human quality. It's what drives us to create beautiful art, to make scientific discoveries, and to build better lives for ourselves. But perfectionism is a distorted, extreme version of this desire. It's not just about trying to do a good job. It's about an overwhelming feeling that nothing you do is ever truly good enough. It's a constant, nagging voice in your head that insists you must always make things better, cleaner, and more perfect, long after the point of reason. A person with a perfectionist mindset often operates with what we call all-or-nothing thinking. In their world, things are either black or white, a complete success or a total failure. There is no middle ground. An essay that gets a 99% score is not a success. It's a failure because of that missing 1%. A presentation with one tiny stumble is not a good presentation. It's a disaster. This kind of thinking can make everyday life incredibly stressful and can effectively paralyze a person, stopping them from moving forward and growing. In simple terms, perfectionism means you set impossibly high standards for yourself. And then you feel a deep sense of disappointment, frustration, or even shame when you cannot reach them. Because these standards are often unrealistic, this cycle of trying and feeling like a failure repeats itself over and over again. Let's imagine a very common situation. You need to write an important email in English for your job. Someone who strives for excellence might write the email, read it over once or twice to check for clarity and major errors, and then send it. The whole process might take 10 minutes, but a perfectionist, they might spend an hour on that same email. They will write a sentence, delete it, and rewrite it. They'll check every single word, every comma, every period, again and again. They'll worry about the tone. Does it sound too friendly? Too formal? They are frozen by the fear of sending an email with even one tiny, insignificant mistake. Instead of communicating effectively and moving on to their next task, they lose precious time and fill their minds with unnecessary stress. This is perfectionism in action. This pattern can appear in so many parts of our daily lives. Think about someone who cleans their home. They might clean the kitchen counters again and again, long after they are already clean, because they see a tiny streak of light that only they can notice. Or consider a student working on a school project. They might never turn it in because they keep thinking, "It's not ready yet. I can make it better." Others might avoid starting a new hobby, like painting or learning a musical instrument, because they are terrified that they won't be perfect from the very first try. In every single one of these scenarios, perfectionism forces the person to wait, to overanalyze, and to redo things, instead of simply acting, learning, and improving naturally through experience. When we bring this back to learning English, the effects of perfectionism are powerful and often invisible. Perhaps you've felt that knot of anxiety in your stomach when you are in a group of people speaking English. You want to join the conversation. You have ideas you want to share, but the words get stuck in your throat. You think, what if I use the wrong tense? What if I mispronounce a word? What if they can't understand my accent? These thoughts, driven by the need to be perfect, keep you silent. You choose to say nothing because silence feels safer than the risk of making a mistake. But in that silence, you lose a precious opportunity to practice, to connect, and to get better. This is how perfectionism quietly, silently kills your linguistic growth. Here's another example. Imagine someone who wants to practice their English writing by keeping a journal. A person focused on progress might write a page every day, not worrying too much about perfect grammar or spelling. They just let their thoughts flow. Over a month, they will have written 30 pages, practiced hundreds of words, and become much more comfortable expressing themselves. The perfectionist, however, might sit down to write and spend 20 minutes just trying to craft the perfect first sentence. They will write, erase, check a dictionary, check a grammar website, and then feel frustrated. After all that effort, they may have only written 2 sentences. They feel tired and discouraged, and might even start to believe, I'm just not good at writing in English. The problem isn't their ability at all. It's the perfectionism that is holding them back, making the process painful instead of joyful. Perfectionism also fuels a dangerous habit of constant comparison. You might listen to a native English speaker on a podcast or in a movie and think, I will never sound like that. My accent is terrible compared to theirs. This comparison can crush your motivation. Instead of celebrating your own journey and recognizing how far you've come, you focus on an impossible standard and feel that your best effort is simply not enough. It's so important to understand that wanting to do well, being diligent, and paying attention to detail are good, healthy qualities. We should all strive to do our best. But when that desire crosses a line, when you push yourself so relentlessly that you expect flawlessness in everything you do, it becomes toxic. Perfectionism leaves no room for mistakes, yet mistakes are the very foundation of learning. They are not signs of failure, they are signs of effort. They are the steps on the staircase of improvement. So, perfectionism is much more than just trying hard. It is a belief system, an attitude that says, I must be perfect, or I am worthless. This attitude can poison your studies, your career, and your overall happiness. Recognizing this crucial difference between healthy striving and harmful perfectionism is the very first step toward setting yourself free. So, why do people become perfectionists in the first place? It's a fascinating question. No one wakes up one morning and consciously decides, today, I'm going to start demanding absolute perfection from myself in everything I do. It's a mindset that usually develops slowly, over many years, and it often has deep roots in our experiences. One of the most powerful reasons is a deep-seated fear of making mistakes. From a very young age, in many cultures, we are subtly taught that mistakes are bad. In school, when you get an answer wrong on a test, it's marked with a big red X. You might lose points, which affects your grade. At home, if you spill milk or break a dish, you might be met with a sigh of frustration or even criticism. Over time, we can start to internalize the message that mistakes equal failure. And failure means we are not smart enough, not good enough, or not careful enough. This belief can cause us to try desperately to avoid mistakes, even tiny ones. We stop seeing mistakes for what they are, essential parts of the learning process, and instead see them as terrifying things that must be hidden or avoided at all costs. Another incredibly strong driver of perfectionism is the fear of judgment from others. So many of us worry intensely about what other people will think of us if we are not perfect. We create entire stories in our minds where others are laughing at us, criticizing us, or thinking less of us. This fear can be paralyzing, especially when you are learning something new and vulnerable, like speaking a new language. You might avoid speaking English in a meeting at work because you're afraid your colleagues will notice your accent or your grammar errors. You might avoid posting a comment in English on social media because you're afraid strangers will point out your spelling mistakes. Instead of feeling the freedom to try and to be a beginner, you feel an immense pressure to appear flawless so that no one can possibly judge you. A third reason is a powerful desire to impress others or to win their approval. Some people grow up in environments, whether in their family or at school, where they only receive praise and positive attention when they achieve something exceptional. They learn that love, attention, and respect are conditional. They are earned by being the best, getting the highest grade, or winning the competition. As they grow into adults, they continue this pattern. They push themselves to meet impossibly high standards, hoping to get that same feeling of approval from their bosses, their teachers, their friends, or even from society at large. They feel this deep compulsion to always present their best side and to hide anything that could be perceived as a weakness or an imperfection. In our modern world, social media plays a huge role in amplifying these feelings. Every single day, we scroll through feeds filled with carefully curated images and videos of people who seem to have perfect lives. We see perfect vacations, perfect careers, perfect relationships, perfect bodies, and seemingly effortless success stories. Even though we might logically know that these posts are just highlight reels and not the full reality, it's almost impossible not to compare our own messy, complicated lives to these polished images. We can start to feel that we, too, must project an image of perfection to be liked, to be followed, or to be seen as successful. This constant stream of comparison can make perfectionist thinking so much stronger because we don't want to appear less capable or less happy than the people we see online. The environments we learn and work in can also add to the pressure. Some schools place such a heavy emphasis on grades that students begin to believe that anything less than an A is a complete failure. Some workplaces in the United States, with their focus on hustle culture, demand fast, flawless, and highly productive work, which can make employees terrified of making even the smallest error. Over time, this intense pressure creates a habit of mind. Always double-check, always triple-check, always fix, and never feel satisfied with your work unless you believe it is absolutely perfect. Family expectations, even when they come from a place of love, can also be a significant cause. Some parents may unintentionally teach perfectionism by consistently expecting their children to win every game, to be first in their class, or to excel at everything they do. Even if the parents have the best intentions, the child can grow up with the underlying belief that their parents' love and acceptance are dependent on perfect performance. As adults, they carry this immense pressure inside them and continue to strive to meet these invisible and often impossible expectations. Finally, perfectionism can also stem from our own innate personality traits. Some people are naturally more organized, responsible, and conscientious. These are generally wonderful qualities. But when these positive traits get mixed with a dose of fear, fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being good enough, they can curdle and transform into unhealthy perfectionism. So, as you can see, perfectionism is rarely about a genuine, joyful desire to be the best for yourself. More often, it is a complex reaction to fear and pressure. The fear of making mistakes, the fear of what others think, and the pressure from society, from school, from family, or from our own social media feeds. Understanding these root causes is so important, because when you know where your perfectionism comes from, you can begin to gently question those old beliefs and start to change how you think and how you act. Perfectionism is not just an abstract idea that lives in your mind. It shows up in your actions and behaviors every single day, often in small but incredibly powerful ways. Many people don't even realize they are behaving like perfectionists because these patterns can feel so normal to them. But if we look closely, we can start to see how perfectionism appears in real-life situations and how it quietly and consistently affects what we do, and more importantly, what we don't do. Let's imagine a student who is learning English. Let's call her Maria. Maria is intelligent and dedicated. She knows a lot of vocabulary words, she understands the grammar rules, and she can understand most of what she hears in movies and podcasts. But when her teacher asks a question in class, or when she's in a situation where she has to speak, she freezes. She stays completely quiet. In her mind, she is frantically trying to build the perfect sentence. She thinks, if I make a grammar mistake, people will think I'm not smart. If I hesitate, they will think I'm not fluent. She feels this wave of nervousness and anxiety wash over her. So, instead of trying to speak and potentially making a mistake, she chooses to say nothing at all. To her, silence feels safer than imperfect speech. On the outside, someone might look at Maria and think she is just shy, or that she doesn't know the answer. But in reality, it is her perfectionism that is silencing her, preventing her from getting the very practice she needs to improve. Another very common example is a person who procrastinates or delays their work because they are waiting for it to be perfect. Let's say a man named Michael has to write a short report for his job. It's a simple 2-page summary. He sits down at his computer and starts writing, but he keeps deleting sentences almost as soon as he types them. He reads the same paragraph over and over again, tweaking a word here, changing a comma there. He's not really improving the report in any meaningful way. He's just stuck in a loop of trying to make each line flawless. Hours go by, but the report is still far from finished because he can never shake the feeling that it's not good enough. The deadline gets closer, and instead of feeling a sense of accomplishment, he feels stressed, anxious, and tired. In the end, he might have to rush to finish it at the last minute, or even miss the deadline entirely. This is a classic example of how perfectionism can take a simple task and turn it into a source of immense pressure, transforming good intentions into wasted time and negative feelings. Perfectionism can even creep into our everyday household tasks. For instance, imagine someone cleaning their kitchen. Most people will wipe down the counters, wash the dishes, and sweep the floor until it looks clean, and then they'll stop and move on with their day. A perfectionist, however, might keep cleaning the same spot on the floor again and again because they see a tiny speck of dust that no one else would ever notice. They might spend an extra hour arranging the spices in the cabinet so they are perfectly aligned. By the end, the kitchen is spotless, but the person feels no joy or satisfaction. They only feel exhausted, and sometimes they even feel a little bit angry at themselves for not being able to do it even better or faster. Let's consider another scenario, one that might feel very familiar. Someone wants to start a new project, like creating a YouTube channel to talk about their hobby, or learning to code to build a website. But they keep putting it off. They tell themselves, "I'll start when I have more free time," or "I'll begin once I have the perfect camera," or "I need to do more research and create a perfect plan first." Deep down, the real reason they are waiting is that they are afraid to start. They want everything to be perfect right from day one. But of course, the perfect moment never arrives. The perfect plan is a myth. And so, months or even years can pass by without any action being taken, and the dream remains just a dream. Perfectionism also has a huge impact on how people make decisions. A perfectionist might spend an agonizingly long time trying to choose something as simple as what to order at a restaurant or what pair of shoes to buy. They overthink every option because they don't want to make the wrong choice. They aren't looking for a good choice. They are searching for the one single best choice. This can make life feel so much heavier and slower than it needs to be, turning simple decisions into draining mental exercises. In the context of learning English, these behaviors are especially harmful. A learner might refuse to join a conversation group because they are afraid of sounding less fluent than the other members. They might avoid writing emails or messages to native speakers because they are worried about every potential grammar mistake. They might even stop listening to English podcasts or watching English shows because they get frustrated that they don't understand every single word. Instead of embracing the journey of learning and making steady progress step by step, they feel stuck, frustrated, and often lose their motivation. These examples clearly show that perfectionism is not simply about wanting high quality. It is a behavior pattern driven by fear and pressure. It has the power to take simple, everyday activities and transform them into stressful, anxiety-inducing experiences. It makes you wait, it makes you avoid, and it makes you repeat things over and over again until you feel completely drained, but still not satisfied. The first and most crucial step to change is recognizing these behaviors in yourself. If you see yourself in any of these stories, please know that you are not alone. Millions of people experience these same struggles every single day. The good news is that once you become aware of how perfectionism looks and feels in your real life, you can begin to take small, intentional steps to break free from its grip. Perfectionism may seem harmless, even admirable, because it often hides behind good intentions like wanting to do my best or having high standards. But in reality, perfectionism can quietly and methodically stop you from learning, from improving, and from moving forward in your life. That is precisely why it is called a silent growth killer. It doesn't scream or shout. It works subtly, in the background of your thoughts, slowly eroding your potential and taking away your opportunities to grow. You might not notice its effects day to day, but over time, it can create a huge gap between where you are and where you could be. One of the most immediate ways perfectionism kills growth is through procrastination and delay. When you believe that everything you do must be perfect, you often wait far too long to even start a task. You tell yourself things like, "I need to do more research first," or "I'll begin when I feel completely ready." But that feeling of being perfectly ready is an illusion. It never truly comes. For example, an English learner might think to themselves, "I'll start practicing my speaking with native speakers after I have mastered all the advanced grammar tenses." But since learning grammar is a lifelong process, that person may never actually start speaking. Days turn into weeks, and weeks turn into months, and their speaking skills remain exactly the same. Instead of learning by doing, which is the most effective way to learn a language, they are stuck in a state of waiting. And waiting means no real progress is happening. Another way perfectionism deeply hurts you is by creating chronic stress and anxiety. When you hold the belief that you absolutely must be perfect, you put an immense and heavy pressure on yourself. Every small task, whether it's writing an email or making a phone call, feels like a high-stakes test. You can spend hours checking, fixing, and worrying about tiny mistakes that most people wouldn't even notice. This constant state of high alert is mentally and physically exhausting. Your mind and body feel tired all the time. You may find it difficult to relax or to genuinely enjoy your work because you are always haunted by the thought that it's not good enough yet. Over time, this chronic stress can completely drain your energy and destroy your motivation. Instead of feeling excited and curious to learn or try new things, you start to feel nervous, fearful, and overwhelmed. Perfectionism also leads to countless missed opportunities. Life's best opportunities often appear unexpectedly, and they don't wait around for you to feel perfectly prepared. Imagine, for example, that your boss asks if anyone on your team wants to lead a small, informal project. A perfectionist might immediately think of all the ways they could fail. "I've never led a project before," they might think. "What if I do a bad job? It's better to let someone else do it." So they stay silent. But that small project could have been a fantastic chance to learn new skills, gain visibility at work, and grow professionally. In the same way, you might avoid applying for a job because you don't meet 100% of the qualifications. You might avoid sharing a creative idea in a meeting because you think it's not fully developed yet. By constantly waiting for a state of perfection, you miss out on valuable real-world experiences that are the true building blocks of growth and success. Perhaps one of the most damaging hidden effects of perfectionism is that it slowly erodes your self-confidence. At first glance, you might think that aiming for perfect results would make you feel stronger and more proud of yourself. But because perfectionism sets goals that are often impossible to reach, it usually does the exact opposite. You frequently feel like you are failing. Even when you accomplish something significant, your perfectionist brain doesn't allow you to feel proud. Instead, it immediately focuses on the small flaws, the minor mistakes, or the parts that weren't absolutely perfect. Over time, you start to internalize a very dangerous belief. I am not good enough. This negative self-talk can deeply damage your confidence in your ability to learn, to work, and even to interact with others in social situations. Instead of being encouraged by your progress, you feel constantly disappointed in yourself, which makes it even harder to take risks and try new things in the future. Furthermore, perfectionism is dangerous because it fundamentally misunderstands and disrupts the natural process of learning. Learning anything complex, especially a language, is not a linear path. It requires you to make mistakes, to feel confused, to try again, and to slowly improve step by step. But perfectionism puts up a huge wall that blocks this natural process. It makes you so afraid to try that you end up practicing less. And when you practice less, your skills naturally grow much more slowly. This creates a vicious cycle. You wait to be perfect before you practice. Because you don't practice, your progress is slow. And because your progress is slow, you feel even more pressure to be perfect the next time you try. This cycle can trap a person for years if they don't become aware of it. The most silent and insidious part of perfectionism is that it convinces you that it's helping you when it is actually hurting you. You might tell yourself, "I'm not a perfectionist, I just have high standards," or "I just want to do my best." But real growth does not come from being flawless. It comes from taking action, making messes, making mistakes, and learning from every single one of them. Perfectionism quietly steals those opportunities from you. It doesn't shout, "Stop growing." It simply whispers, "Wait a little longer," or "Are you sure that's good enough?" It keeps you waiting, worrying, and doubting yourself until one day you look back and realize that time has passed, and you haven't moved forward nearly as much as you could have. Understanding these profound effects is critical, because once you can clearly see how perfectionism delays your actions, increases your stress, steals your opportunities, and weakens your confidence, you can begin to make different choices. You can consciously choose progress instead of perfection. You can decide that doing something imperfectly is infinitely better than doing nothing perfectly. It is so important that we pause here to understand a very crucial distinction: the difference between having healthy high standards and suffering from harmful perfectionism. They can look similar from the outside, but internally, they feel completely different and lead to dramatically different outcomes. Wanting to do well is a good thing. Setting ambitious goals, working hard, and trying to improve yourself are all healthy, positive behaviors that are essential for growth. But perfectionism is not the same as having healthy high standards. The difference might seem subtle at first, but it makes a world of difference in how you feel, how you work, and how you learn. When you have healthy high standards, you aim to do your very best, but you also fully accept that mistakes are a natural and unavoidable part of the process. You understand that growth is not instant. It takes time, effort, and patience. You might say to yourself, "I really want to do a great job on this presentation, but I know it's okay if it's not absolutely perfect. I will learn from any feedback I get and do even better next time." This kind of thinking makes you feel motivated and challenged, not scared and anxious. You are willing to take action even when you don't feel 100% ready, because you know that the act of doing is how you improve. You see challenges as opportunities, not as threats. Harmful perfectionism, on the other hand, leaves absolutely no room for mistakes. A perfectionist thinks, if I can't do this perfectly from the start, then I shouldn't even do it at all. This mindset creates a deep sense of fear and pressure rather than positive motivation. Instead of empowering you to start and grow, perfectionism often paralyzes you, stopping you from even trying. It makes you believe that only flawless results have any value. Therefore, any small error, any tiny imperfection, feels like a catastrophic failure that reflects badly on you as a person. Let's look at two people who are both learning English to see this difference in action. The first person, let's call her Sarah, has healthy, high standards. She says to herself, I'm going to try to speak up in my English class today. I might make some grammar mistakes, or my pronunciation might not be perfect, but that's okay. Each time I open my mouth and try, I will get a little bit better and a little more confident. Sarah practices, learns from her errors, and sees her fluency improve steadily over time. She feels good about her progress. The second person, Tom, is a perfectionist. He thinks, I will only speak in class when I am absolutely certain I can say every sentence perfectly. Because he can never reach that impossible level of perfection, especially as a learner, he stays silent week after week. He doesn't get any real-world speaking practice, and so his progress becomes incredibly slow. He feels frustrated and stuck. In the end, Sarah, the person with healthy standards, moves forward much, much faster, even though she probably made more mistakes along the way. Her mistakes were actually helping her. Let's take another example. Writing. Someone with healthy high standards is assigned to write an essay. They do their research, write a draft, check it once or twice for major errors, and then they submit it. They know it's not a literary masterpiece, but it's a good effort, and it's done. They feel a sense of relief and accomplishment for having finished the task. A perfectionist, given the same assignment, might spend countless hours editing, rewriting, and obsessing over every small detail. They might change the same sentence 10 times. They might worry for an hour about a single word choice. Sometimes they take so long that they miss the deadline, or they get so frustrated that they never submit the essay at all because it never feels good enough. The key difference lies in your mindset and your emotional state. Healthy high standards make you feel energized and balanced. You work hard, but you also know when to stop and say, this is good enough. You are able to celebrate your progress, even if it's small. You see mistakes as teachers, not as enemies. Harmful perfectionism, in contrast, makes you feel heavy, tense, and constantly dissatisfied. You never feel like you've done enough. Even when you achieve something great, you can only see the small parts that weren't perfect. So, the fundamental difference is this. Healthy standards are about the journey of growth. They focus on effort and progress. Perfectionism is only about the destination. It focuses exclusively on a flawless outcome. Healthy standards encourage you to take action, while perfectionism creates a fear that prevents action. Healthy standards build your confidence over time because you see yourself improving. But perfectionism slowly destroys your confidence because you are always chasing an impossible ideal that you can never reach. Learning to tell the difference between these two mindsets is a game changer. It allows you to keep the positive drive to improve while letting go of the toxic pressure to be perfect. Breaking free from the grip of perfectionism is not something that happens overnight. It's not like flipping a switch. It is a process, a journey of unlearning old habits of thought and learning new, more compassionate ones. But it is a process you can start right now, today, with small, intentional steps. The very first and most important step is to consciously change your relationship with mistakes. You must begin to accept mistakes as a normal, necessary, and even valuable part of learning. Think about every single skill you have today, from walking as a toddler to speaking your native language. You learned all of it through a process of trial and error. You fell down hundreds of times when you were learning to walk, but you stood up again. You said words incorrectly when you learned to talk, but you kept trying. Learning English, or any other complex skill, is exactly the same. Mistakes are not signs that you are failing. They are signs that you are trying, that you are learning. When you make a mistake, instead of letting your inner critic attack you, try to pause and see it as helpful information. Ask yourself, okay, what can I learn from this? What does this mistake teach me? This simple shift in perspective, from seeing mistakes as failure to seeing them as feedback, is incredibly powerful. The next practical step is to start small. Perfectionists often feel completely overwhelmed because they look at a big goal and think they need to achieve it perfectly all at once. The key is to break your tasks down into tiny, manageable actions. If your big goal is to improve your English speaking, you do not need to give a long, perfect speech today. Your small step could be as simple as saying 1 or 2 sentences out loud to yourself in the mirror. Tomorrow, your small step could be leaving a short voice message for a friend in English. Each tiny step builds your confidence and creates momentum. Over time, those hundreds of small, imperfect steps add up to huge progress. It is also vital to consciously shift your focus from perfection to progress. This means you stop asking yourself, "Am I perfect yet?" And you start asking, "Am I a little bit better than I was yesterday? Or last week?" Progress is real. It's something you can actually see and measure. And celebrating it gives you positive energy to keep going. For example, maybe last month you were too scared to even answer the phone in English, but today you had a 1-minute conversation. That is incredible progress. It matters so much more than being perfect. If you consistently focus on your small improvements, you will feel encouraged and motivated to continue your journey. Another essential step is to practice self-kindness or self-compassion. Perfectionists are often incredibly harsh and critical with themselves. They have an inner voice that says things they would never, ever dream of saying to a friend. For example, after making a grammar mistake, a perfectionist might think, "I'm so stupid. I'll never get this right." But if a friend made the same exact mistake, they would likely say something encouraging like, "It's okay. You're learning. Don't worry about it." You have to start talking to yourself like you would talk to someone you genuinely care about. Be gentle with yourself. Be patient. Be kind. When you make an error, try telling yourself, "That's okay. This is part of the process." Everyone makes mistakes when they're learning. This kind of supportive self-talk is crucial for reducing fear and building the resilience you need to keep trying. Finally, you must learn to celebrate your small wins. Perfectionists are experts at ignoring their successes because they are too busy scanning for imperfections. But celebrating your progress is not silly. It's a critical part of staying motivated. If you spoke English for 5 minutes straight today, that is a huge win. Take a moment to acknowledge it and feel proud. If you wrote and sent an email without checking it 20 times, that is a win. Celebrate it. Even if your efforts are not perfect, they are still infinitely better than doing nothing at all. Each small success is a piece of evidence that you are moving forward. And the more you acknowledge and celebrate these moments, the more energy and courage you will build to continue improving. It can also be very helpful to remind yourself that nobody on this planet is perfect. Even the experts in any field make mistakes. Even the most eloquent native speakers of English sometimes forget words, use the wrong grammar in a casual conversation, or start a sentence and have to change it halfway through. The difference is that they don't let those small errors stop them. They just keep going. And that is what makes them fluent. You can learn to do the same. Overcoming perfectionism is really about changing your entire mindset. It's about choosing action over fear. It's about choosing learning over waiting. And it's about choosing kindness over criticism. If you commit to taking these small steps every single day, accepting mistakes, starting small, focusing on progress, being kind to yourself, and celebrating each step forward, you will slowly begin to feel lighter and freer. You will discover that you don't need to be perfect to grow. You just need to be willing to keep moving forward, one imperfect step at a time. Let me tell you a simple story about a language learner named Maria. Maria was a dedicated and intelligent student who desperately wanted to learn English very well. She was living in the United States and knew that improving her English was the key to advancing in her career. She worked incredibly hard. She spent hours every evening reading grammar books. She made flashcards for new vocabulary words, and she watched English movies every single day. But even after many months of this intense effort, her speaking skills were not improving very much. The reason was simple. Maria was a perfectionist. She held a very strong belief that she should only speak when she was absolutely certain that her sentences would be perfect. Every time her teacher in her evening English class asked a question, Maria would stay silent. In her mind, a storm of worried thoughts would erupt. What if I say something wrong? What if I forget a crucial word? My accent is so thick, people will think I'm not smart. Because of these powerful, fearful thoughts, Maria actively avoided any and all speaking practice. She spent almost all of her study time alone, diligently writing notes and memorizing rules. She truly believed that one day, after enough silent study, she would magically wake up and feel ready to speak perfectly. But of course, that day never came. She continued to accumulate more and more knowledge in her head, but she still felt a deep sense of nervousness and fear about actually using that knowledge in a real, live conversation. One day, after class, her teacher, a kind woman named Mrs. Davis, asked her to stay for a moment. Mrs. Davis said, "Maria, I see how hard you work. Your understanding of English is excellent, but your problem is not your English. Your problem is your perfectionism. You are waiting to be perfect, but perfect does not exist in language learning. You must be brave. You must speak. You must make mistakes, and you must learn from them. That is the only way you will truly grow." At first, Maria felt a wave of fear. The idea of speaking imperfectly was terrifying to her, but she respected her teacher, and she was tired of feeling stuck. So, she decided to try. In the very next class, when Mrs. Davis asked a question, Maria's heart started pounding, but she forced herself to raise her hand. She answered the question. Her sentence wasn't perfect. She made a small grammar mistake. But then, something surprising happened. Absolutely nobody laughed at her. Nobody criticized her. In fact, her teacher smiled warmly and said, "Excellent point, Maria. Thank you for sharing. You are improving so much." It was a small moment, but for Maria, it was a huge breakthrough. From that day forward, she created a new rule for herself. She would focus on communication, not perfection. She started speaking up in every class, even if she felt her grammar wasn't perfect. She began writing short, simple text messages to her American friends without checking a dictionary for every single word. She started to see every conversation as a chance to practice, not as a test to be passed or failed. She practiced in small, manageable steps every day, instead of waiting for some mythical, perfect moment. After just a few months of this new approach, Maria's English speaking skills improved dramatically. But more importantly, she felt so much more confident. She actually started to enjoy the process of learning. She was no longer afraid to try new things or to put herself in situations where she might make a mistake. She finally realized that her mistakes had been her greatest teachers. They helped her learn faster and more deeply than all the hours she had spent silently studying her books. Maria's story is a beautiful reminder for all of us that when you can let go of perfectionism, you open the door to real, meaningful growth. By giving yourself permission to be imperfect, you give yourself the chance to practice, to improve, and to succeed much faster than you ever could if you waited to be perfect before you started. Before we finish our time together today, let's take a moment to gently review the most important ideas from this episode. These points are simple, but they are incredibly powerful. And if you can keep them in your mind as you go about your week, they can help you break free from the trap of perfectionism and grow faster in your English learning and in every area of your life. First, we learned that perfectionism is not just about having high standards. It is the obsessive need to be completely perfect and a deep fear of making any mistakes. On the surface, it can look like a positive trait because it makes you seem dedicated and hardworking. But in reality, it can completely stop you from learning, from taking action, and from improving. Second, we talked about how perfectionism is almost always caused by fear. It's rooted in the fear of making mistakes, the fear of being judged by other people, and the underlying fear of not being good enough. Many of us feel this pressure because of our experiences in school, expectations from our family, or the constant exposure to the seemingly perfect lives we see on social media. Simply understanding that these fears are common and normal can help you feel less alone and can remind you that making mistakes is a natural part of being human for everyone. Third, we saw what perfectionism actually looks like in our daily lives. It shows up when you procrastinate on tasks because you are waiting to do them perfectly. It shows up when you stay silent instead of trying to speak English because you want to say everything correctly. It also shows up when you spend far too much time checking and fixing your work, or when you avoid starting a new project or hobby because you don't feel you are ready yet. Fourth, we discussed exactly why perfectionism is a silent growth killer. It quietly holds you back by causing you to delay your actions, by making you feel constantly stressed and anxious, by causing you to miss out on valuable opportunities, and by slowly chipping away at your confidence in yourself. You may believe you are just being careful, but in truth, you are sabotaging your own progress. Fifth, we learned the crucial difference between having healthy high standards and suffering from harmful perfectionism. Healthy standards help you grow because they motivate you to do your best while still allowing room for mistakes. Perfectionism, however, allows no room for error and makes you afraid to even try. Next, we talked about practical, simple tips on how to overcome perfectionism. Remember to reframe your thinking to accept mistakes as a part of learning. Start with very small, manageable steps. Focus on your progress instead of chasing perfection. Be kind and compassionate to yourself when you struggle, and learn to celebrate your small wins along the way. These small mental shifts can make a huge difference in your journey. Finally, we heard Maria's story, which showed us a real-life example of how letting go of the need to be perfect can lead to faster growth and greater happiness. By practicing even when she knew she wasn't perfect, she improved step by step, and soon she became more confident and skilled than she ever imagined she could be. If you remember only one single thing from our entire conversation today, please let it be this: progress is infinitely more powerful than perfection. Each small step you take, each small effort you make, and yes, each small mistake you learn from, is a vital part of your growth. Perfection is not the goal. Learning, improving, and enjoying the journey. That is what truly matters. As we come to the end of this episode, I want to leave you with a small, quiet reflection. I invite you to take a moment right now, just for yourself, and think about your own life. Can you identify one area where you might be a perfectionist? Maybe it is right here, in your English learning. Perhaps you wait to speak because you want every single sentence to be grammatically correct. Maybe it's at your job or in your studies, where you spend too much time and energy trying to make every project flawless. Or maybe it's in your personal life, where you put enormous pressure on yourself to always be the perfect parent, partner, or friend. Just gently identify that one area. And now, ask yourself this simple question. What is one small, tiny thing I can do differently today to choose progress over perfection? It doesn't have to be a big, dramatic action. It can be something incredibly simple. It could be deciding to speak just one short sentence in English today, even if it has mistakes. It could be finishing a task at work without checking it 100 times. It could simply be giving yourself permission to try something new and to be a beginner, to be imperfect. One small intentional action can be the start of a massive change. Please remember, growth does not come from waiting until you are perfect. It comes from taking small, messy steps, making mistakes, and learning as you go. Each and every time you choose action instead of perfection, you become stronger, more confident, and more skilled. Thank you so much for spending your valuable time with me today, here on English in Fluency. I truly appreciate your support and your commitment to your own growth. I sincerely hope this episode has helped you understand how perfectionism can silently stop your progress. And more importantly, what you can do to move forward with more freedom and joy. If you found this conversation helpful, Please make sure you are subscribed and turn on your notifications so you don't miss our next episode. We will continue to learn together, not perfectly, but step by step, which is always the best way to grow.